Hello everybody, it's DuckFaden07 with another Hollow One video. I'm pretty excited for this one. Can you remember I was more excited for the list last time? Okay, so I did a video of this list a few days ago. First time brewing the list, playing and doing the 5-0. Then some guys, friends from the Discord, picked it up, tried the deck, really liked it, and the guy texted me that he picked up the deck, and he immediately did a 10-0 score with the deck, which got me interested again to to try play some more for myself. He said that he put some screenshots, matchups, all wins were 2-0, and he said he done a 10-0 with the deck. I discussed that with him after that, and. And yeah, he had a pretty good success. So I was interested to start again. I did another league and did another 5-0. So I also repeated his 10-0, and it were the first 20 matches with the deck that I'm aware of, and with this exact list. And all first 20 matches with the list ended up winning. So 20 matches, 20 wins, 0 losses. It's pretty spectacular. It's a huge score. I personally never heard about some list doing 20-0 in the first 20 matches by two different players, both doing 10-0. So pretty cool. I'm very excited for the potential and the strength of this list. So as you know, like after the Dominaria United, I brewed this list with Urber Glurgov and Hedron Crab, but that list was still playing the Asmo and the Underworld Cookbook. Um, after that list, I had a trophy with that list and had a pretty good success with it. I was pretty satisfied with it, but I really wanted it to be more explosive, and Asmo and Cookbook kind of were the problem, and. So I brewed the list with Goblin Bushwhackers and the Memnites. It was pretty aggressive, and I made a video which was contained some pretty cool gameplay, and also turn 2 win with the Goblin Bushwhacker, multiple Hollow ones, Venge ones on turn 2, which was very cool. And in that list, I realized how aggressive and important the Flameblade Adept can be for this list. So I decided to mix up both of these lists and get rid of the Asmo and the Cookbook, which I always felt they were kind of the weakest link. And Asmo felt weird because in this deck because you can never count on it. You're playing Burning Inquiry and Goblin Lore in your deck, and Asmo often forced me into playing some non-ideal plays. A lot of these situations, I didn't want to inquiry on one. I wanted to try it on two to get the discard effect and play the Asmo, and often it would get stuck in my hand, and I would not play the inquiry on turn one. I would wait until turn two and then discard my Asmo and realize, wow, I just hold the entire turn because of the Asmo and just discarded from my hand with inquiry. And in that situation, after a few of similar situations, I decided that this is not something I want to do with this deck. I just want to be aggressive as possible. Play the Adept on turn one or play the Inquiry on turn one. I want this to be my best two one turn one plays. Also, Hedron Crab. It's incredible in all Vengevine lists, but in particular works well with Urber Glurgov. These two guys in combination can make a pretty huge Urber Glurgov already on turn 2 if Hedron Crab is not answered. And on turn 3, in a lot of these situations, you will have very huge Goif attacking, and mostly on turn 4. By turn 4, with this deck, Urborg often is so big that it attacks for little damage just by itself. And that's it. So sometimes you don't even interact with your graveyard and can play over the graveyard hate with this Flameblade Adepts and the Hollow ones. Sometimes the turn 1 Adept into turn 2 Adept Inquiry Hollow 1 can lead to turn 3 wins with Goblin Lore and few street raid cycles and stuff like that. Um, so this deck can be very explosive in a few different ways. There is just this drawing discarding thing with adepts playing hollow ones, bringing back Vengevines, of course. There's also just a play where you go for the Hedron Crab Urber Lurgoyf. There's this usual other gameplay like going turn 2 Insulate Neonate into discarding Vengevine, playing another 1 drop, bringing back Vengevine, then going turn 3 Urber Lurgoyf with Kicker, which becomes huge. Then turn 4 Urber Lurgoyf with double Kicker gets even bigger. And these Urber Lurgoyfs can often dominate the game in this kind of situations, just playing playing a huge threat that, by the way, uh, is not just a huge threat in the deck, but also a very good enabler. And playing a 2 mana like 10/10 creature, or 3 mana also 10/10 creature that gets some stuff into your graveyard, or even better for 4 mana if you're able in the mid or late game. It's just incredible value for this deck that ties things down incredibly well. So I would say that Urbal Gurgov is the best creature in the deck in 50% of matchups. I only get rid of him in the matchups where I need to really go all in on a turn three win or bust, and like in all other matchups where I can go uh, play just a longer game, just against some 4 color Romas, or maybe. Or maybe control decks, all mid-range decks. This creature just gets so huge, they can't deal with it using burn spells. They need to have graveyard hate at that exact point when this creature is attacking, and that can be as soon as turn 3. If they don't have the immediate answer, this can end up very bad for them. A lot of the decks having only burn spells for removal are often unable to deal with it as soon as it hits the field. It's very powerful in this shell, and this we are playing 36 creatures. A lot of the times after the graveyard hate, having the Urber Lurgov as in the hand as the enabler with double kicker gets it big enough out of the bolt range, sometimes even out of the um, other burn spells range. And that's it. Okay, there is always Root Valas here for the interaction with the Goblin Lore, Burning Inquiry on a turn 1 and 2 to get a free a creature that can also deal a lot of damage. Also, having gaining another free trigger to cast the Vengevine, to bring back Vengevine from the yard, and that's it. Okay, so we have 17 lands here, playing 1 Blood Crypt for the uh, second Lurgoyf Kicker ability, playing 2 Steam Vents. Often this land is fetched on turn 1, is the most important land in a lot of situations because of this One of Wonder. Having Hedron Crabs in the main means we are going to go through a lot of our deck, binning a lot of our deck each game in the graveyard, and it's very common to find Wonder in more than 50% of all games played. So fetching for Steam Vents on turn 1, it's very crucial in a lot of games. So make sure you do it. Playing 3 Stopping Grounds, we have to be we have to get 2 mana to cast Vengevine as consistently as possible. It's a not a great play, but it's a necessary play in a lot of situations where it's also can be a winning play. And playing 4 mana 4/3 haster from your hand is still good, and you get a enable option for your deck to do this. Okay, it's also important for the Goif and sometimes to be able to double spell in post board games with Ancient Grudges and the Urbal Gurgoyf on the same turn. And yeah, that's it. So the sideboard is finally, after playing a lot of games with this deck, I think it's perfectly tweaked. This 15 cards on the sideboard is all you need. You don't need anything else. You'll be able to win all any matchups currently played in modern with these 15 cards. I think it's really important to have the abundant amount of anti-graveyard hate these pieces. For Havar Mites, Havar Mite is incredible in this deck. It's just a 1/1 creature that triggers a Vengewine on the early turns. Also deals with any graveyard hate. Leyline Void, Rest in Peace, all the artifact-based graveyard hate, and we have our mites, but we have her mites on the side, but mostly we bring it in for the matchups where opponents bring enchantment hate, and the ancient grudges mostly for the matchups we know that opponent is only playing artifact based hate. Furies we bring in against Doughty, Voidwalker, but also against Yagmoth, against all aggro decks, tribal decks like merfolks, goblins, humans, small creature aggro decks like Death in Texas. It also can be relevant to kill Dryad of Elysian Grove against Dryad decks. Blood Moon definitely here to help against Amulet Titan, to help against all the 5 color decks. It's better than Magus of the Moon against, let's say, 4 color, 5 color Omna decks. And they very easily get rid of the Magus of the Moon because they play Furies, they play Solitudes, they play Bolt, but they definitely have problems dealing with the early Blood Moon. So Blood Moon is because of that there, and also helps with, of course, land-dependent matchups like Tron and similar. Leyland Void as the best graveyard hate option for this deck. It's free. You play it, just put it into play from your hand without wasting mana, wasting turns to cast it. Um, it's particularly great against Rakdos Scam and all Scam variants. It's great against similar decks playing graveyard strategies like Dredge, which can be awkward matchup because you're playing Burning Inquiry and enabling them a bit too well. Uh, it's also just great against the Living End, as you could see as you will see in the video from the match in this latest 5 league. So, um, as I said, deck from its creation has 20 wins and 0 losses. Um, and you could see the first 5 wins I got with the list in my first video, and we will now go through the second 5 league in a row with this list, and it's pretty incredible. Like entire league, nobody came even close to winning the game. Only 2 games I lost where deck just beat it itself because of mana screw. I kept a 1 lander, didn't get a second land in the next 15 cards. So that was the only way I could lose a game. It deck practically seems like unbeatable in this variant. Nothing I encountered in my 10 matches, and Cyberpunk from the Discord encountered in his 10 matches. Nothing came even close to winning not the match, but even a game. Just all games were 2-0s, like in his experience and in my experience too. I don't know if this is new Hogak of Modern, but deck feels very, very powerful, and not a lot of stuff can stop it from doing its thing, and it's very, very good at dealing with post-board hate. And we have everything necessary and so very mana efficient with this Havar Might and the Ancient Grudges and Furies. So mana efficient, and we can just deal it with the investing of minimal mana and continue doing our stuff, which is very, very explosive, really powerful. And not to mention that some of the games we can even win without even interacting with the graveyard if we have multiple Flameblade Adepts, hollow ones, and yeah, it's a pretty successful strategy to play at the moment. And we'll now go through the matches of these last 5 league. Okay, so this is match one. Playing against a Magic Dance. Sorry, I will mute the sound. Okay, started first. I decided I cycled always cycle a street rate, not always, but in most situations you will cycle a street rate on turn one unless you already have Flameblade Adept in your hand. If you have Flameblade Adept, then just play the Adept and hold the street rate for turn two. Otherwise, always do it on turn one. You never know when you find the Inquiry or Adept on the top of your deck. My Hedron, I had multiple options for turn two. That's why I decided to not play to jam the Hedron Crab on turn one, which is not something I usually do, but didn't have another one mana creature to maybe try to trigger the Vengevine on turn two with Hedron Crab and another creature. That's why I decided to go for it and just played two Urber Glurgoyfs, and you can see that already on turn four, my Urber Glurgoyf is attacking for lethal damage, and you can imagine just how hard for any deck playing a red-based removal is to deal with a 13-14 huge creature on turn 4, and it even filled half of my graveyard and not just done the damage, so it put the Vengevine into my graveyard, which now I got with two of my cheap creatures. Also got the Neonate here to discard my Ox and draw more cards, so there is no deck in Modern that can beat the Ox grind, the grind that Ox can provide in this first match. So I go for the attack first. I play the Hedron Crab. So this way I expect Vengevine to die, and I expect to get it back easily with Ox replay from the graveyard. Of course, they trade with it. I draw a card, decide to cast the Inquiry to mess up my opponent's hand. Play the Ox, get the Vengevine back, play the Fetch, mill three more cards, and my opponent really struggling to survive. They're not doing that bad, honestly, but it's too much. They play Dead Shadow and another Dead Shadow, but I have too much stuff in my graveyard at this point. I found another one mana creature. Decided to go for the attack with the Ox. My opponent blocks. I replay the Ox from my graveyard. So they cast a second Dragon Rage Channeler, threatening for the lethal for next turn, but I have only 7 cards left in my deck, and I have the ability with to find the wonder with the Ox and Goblin Lore. So I did find it. I put it in my hand first, then put it into my graveyard with Ox, and now all my creatures fly, so I can I can attack with everything for lethal on the same turn, and that's it. That was first match against Grixis Shadow. It's a pretty interesting matchup. This deck has A lot of stuff, a lot of removal, drowning lock, fatal pushes, unholy heats, lightning bolts. They can be very aggressive with the channelers and dig better uh, than most of the decks. As you can see, as I already explained, the loss came from not being able to draw into the second land. I had great hand, neonate discarding Vengewine, in playing another neonate. Getting back Vengevine, then next turn again, putting Vengevine, playing again 2 mana creatures. I think it would probably unbeatable for my opponent, but just didn't get the second land to do all that stuff. So kind of deck lost to itself. Sometimes you just these hands with one land and Burning Inquiry can be so good, and I have a history of keeping and winning with those type of hands, so I think it's worth of risking. But sometimes you just don't find it. I went through the 17 cards from the top of my deck and didn't find the second land, which is pretty weird, but yeah, sometimes you just don't get it. So my opponent played the Rage, played the Channeler on their turn one, so it was pretty safe for me to go for the Neonate, discard Vengevine, Neonate, get back Vengevine, and then try to repeat the same thing next turn. They go for the fetch push and Nickel Spellbomb to get rid of my Vengevine, so in this situation, I definitely want to get rid of the nickel spell bomb, and I will can do this easily by making them by triggering the Vengevine and forcing them to use it. That's exactly what I done. Play the two creatures, and now I have the ability to just continue playing a normal game. A lot of these situations, you can see that when you play the inquiry and with one or two cards in hand, you're left with the same two cards in hand. This happens a lot. I have a lot of experience playing this deck, and I can really confirm this happens a lot. I'm not sure if this is some kind of bug or something, but it definitely happens a lot. So I was able to attack with everything here. They had to they decided to use the explosives, kill their own DRC. So I got the 4 damage through. They go for the Kroxa, but it's kind of ideal for me, just discarding my wonder so I don't have to, and this Vengevine getting over for final damage. That was win against Grixis Shadow. It was probably the closest game. And this in this game, this first match, I also decided to keep a one-lander, and again, just lose the same way as I did lose the game in the first match. I just never I will played against the Living End, and if I just succeeded to find the second land with the Hedron Crab, I think it would be very hard for them to beat. Putting 6 cards into my graveyard, and then again fear of repeating that next turn. But I just didn't get it, and yeah, the game was not over, but really hard for me to get out of this situation. They just put a Waker in the graveyard, another with Stripped River Winder. So I find myself in a pretty tough situation, but definitely not over yet. I have a lot of stuff to play here. But yeah, not ideal too. Pretty hard. I finally got land a bit late, so I just played my Rootwalla. Played as many. I want to play as many creatures as possible, as many blockers. So I play Hollow One. I play Flameblade Adept, and this way played a lot of these creatures. My opponent probably feared of some counter attacks, so they attack just with the Curator of Mysteries. They also had the Brazen Borrower in hand, and that may be the reason. So they just wanted to stay back, make sure they are safe, and just cast the Borrower and win the game through the air. So I decided to to kick the Urborgorgov, try to find the Wonder, but that was my only chance here. Didn't find it, so that was it. Uh, Loss against game one against Living End. I think it's a pretty hard matchup for Living End usually. I have so many ways to fill graveyard faster than them, and also have the ability to be very aggressive with these adepts. A lot of the times I get a kill even before they were able to cast the Living End when I'm on the play with Flameblade Adept. That's what I try to do here. I played a Hollow One, pumped my Adept, played the Neonate. It's always worth it to do another draw, try to find another Hollow One, which is exactly what I've done here. Find another Hollow One, cast it immediately this turn, um, and yeah, very aggressive, definitely. Also, this Burning Inquiry can mess up opponent's hand often, just getting rid of their cascade spells or some hate spells, whatever. Okay, so I've done 5 damage here. Have a lot of damage next turn with the Inquiry and also get into the street rate. Was good draw here. Also filling my graveyard is nice. So draw into Rotwala, so I go for the Inquiry. And you can again see that I was left with the same card in my hand which I had before casting the Inquiry, so you could already see this happening 2 times in these 2 leagues. I have 2 cards. When I have 1 or 2 cards and I cast the Inquiry, I'm always left with those same cards in my hand after the Inquiry resolves. It's just happened too many times for me. I'm not sure if that's coincidence. I think it's more likely it's some kind of bug. My opponent had to go for the Living End here to survive, but I have more creatures in graveyard than them. My creatures are better than theirs. Ox drawing me 3 cards. Uh, I was able to cast the Adept, pass the turn here. I tried to find another creature for to trigger the Vengevine immediately. Didn't get it. It's fine though. So so my opponent doesn't have much choice. I have two coming in the air. They have to block it or deal with it. They have the subtlety to block the wonder, but this means that next turn all my creatures are flying, so they have to deal with it. They had to block my Ox too, so I was able to replay it from the graveyard. Bring back Vengevine and also discard another Vengevine, draw another 3 cards, which is pretty good. My opponent was in a definitely tough situation. They needed to find the Endurance, a green card, and the Living End on the same turn to be able to win this. That doesn't seem very easy for my opponent, so they go for the attacks here. I just block everything and leave enough creatures back to kill him or force him to go for another living end. I expected another living end, so I just I put some creatures I wanted to have that in my graveyard, and I played Goblin Lore on the next turn to pump these adepts, make them each if kill my opponent if they go through. So, yeah, my opponent was definitely forced to go for Living End again. No other way to live, to survive. So I go for it. They definitely, of course, have the Living End again. They exiled 1 Living End. They already played one 2 turns before, and this now it was the 3rd Living End. So again, they do the thing. I bring back huge amount of creatures, so still in a lot better situation, and still have a better graveyard than they do, so they're still looking for to find that endurance green card and the last living end. I draw a bunch of cards here with put a bunch of cards here with the neonate into the graveyard, so I have better choice of removing cards with dogs. I don't want to remove creatures. So just play my Stomping Ground and replay the Ox, draw 3 more cards. Again, having the lethal next turn. My opponent is still looking for solutions. So, yeah, it seems like a lot of these living end decks play 3 living end and the fourth one on the sideboard. I guess they put the fourth one in. So they go for the last one. They go for the last one, and they get the endurance back from their graveyard into the place. So they shuffle their graveyard, so they're able to find living end again. But they didn't have it, so they had to concede. That was it. That was game two. Very, very long, prolonged game, the longest in the entire league, definitely. This was definitely by far the longest game. In game three, in the match two against my living end opponent, had Leyline on the Void with Inquiry on turn one, pretty much perfect. Adapt, they kept the force of negation in. I went for the Hollow One on turn one. They had a subtlety, which was okay, nothing special. They also bottomed the Hollow One. Just wanted to fill my graveyard and try to cast this Ox of Gonas from the graveyard. Also just wanted to jam the Rotwala, find the second green source to cast Vengevine from my hand, and finish the game that way before they get a solution for the Leyline. I accidentally missed pumping the Rutvala on this turn, which could be dangerous. I almost missed the lethal because of that. Accidentally skipping. The turn. They had the Otawara finally on turn 4, so they started filling their graveyard, preparing to cast the Living End didn't have much here. They couldn't. I attacked for 7. If I pumped the Rootwalla on that turn, this would already be lethal, but my opponent wasn't able to fetch here, maybe didn't find a Living End spell, so that was it. I also had 2 Oxes in my graveyard, so even if they did have the Living End, I would probably still win, so that's it. Okay, that was match 2 against Living End. We can all other matches were 2-0, so all matches where I wasn't mana screwed, I just easily won a 2-0 without much competition or a fear of losing from my opponents. So match 3 starting second. I went for the Inquiry, casting the Rottweiler of Inquiry, putting the Wanderer into my graveyard, still have a Goblin Lore and Inquiry in my hand for the next turn. They played the ending. This was my opponent playing Scapeshift, 5-color Scapeshift. So I wasn't in a lot of hurry against this deck. They go for the Dryad, play another land. My best thing was try to play the Urborg Lurgoyf. I played it for 3 mana, get 1 kicker. They decide to attack into it and sacrifice their Dryad for to kill my Urborg Lurgoyf with Fury. It's that good that Scapeship deck is sacrificing Dryad to kill it. In this situation, I played the Hollow One, bring back Vengevine. Now all my guys are flying, so I have a two-turn clock to finish my opponent. They have to do something soon or they die next turn. Them having the 5 lands, it's pretty good. They need to have Dryad and 2 more lands and Escape Shift to win, so it's pretty impossible for my opponent to do this. I go Hedron Crab and Burning Inquiry before combat to get rid of any surprises they played Solitude. But yeah, every creature I have is flying anyway, so they can't really. There's no way for them to survive, so that's it. They concede after they realize that, and that was game 1 again in match 3. Game 2. I had the turn 2 play with Neonate discarding Vengevine playing Rootvala, but I always cycle a street raid. If you don't have the Flameblade Adept to play on turn 1 or some you mostly in this situation cycle the street rate immediately on turn 1. You never know when you'll get the adept or burning inquiry of the top of your deck. In this situation, I found the inquiry on top, and I was able to put a hollow one on into play on turn 1, which was pretty good. And then on turn 2, still being able to bring back Vengevine attack. Pretty aggressive. I didn't want opponents to ping my guys, so I decided to kill Bran immediately, deal 4 damage. My opponent bring back Poseiju, but that's nearly not good enough. I go for the draw card, end of their turn, put Rootvala into play. This way I have lethal if they don't have removal, so I go for pump both Rootvalas, just attack with everything. It is exactly 14 damage. They have the binding to survive on 4. Just replay another adept, and they don't. I don't think they only play one verdict. I think in a deck to find with the bring to light, but it's just one. So they play the Omnat, but yeah, Omnat is not enough to survive this. So they concede game 2 very quick. That was it. Okay, so we can now watch game 4. This was a matchup playing against control, blue-white control, splashing, other colors for binding. So I had again the turn 2 Neonate discard Vengevine Hedron Crab, unfortunately not being able to get value out of the crab, but still getting Vengevine and putting crab on the field. Turn 2 pretty good. With 2 Urbolurgovs in hand, you will see just how quickly they can get too big. So my opponent tap a land, which means I can't kicker the Urbolurgov on this turn, but just jamming it and having a huge threat for next turn attack with this Hedron Crab pumping it really cool. Or in the meantime, still having the Vengevine attacking and Ox into graveyard if needed. So my opponent had to deal with this Urba for the next turn, or they're gonna die. So they have the ending for it, but Vengevine still attacking. I have a lot of other stuff going on. I decided just to go for another Goif, pay the kicker cost, mill more cards. Got 2 Oxes in graveyard if needed. Didn't want to cast anything, not overcommit into the Supreme Verdict. It's not necessary because it's very hard for my opponent to deal with everything I have. So I just go for another attack. They expectedly have the Solitude, so they block the Vengevine. I play the Inquiry to try to mess up their hand, to bring back the Vengevine that died, then mill myself some more and replay the socks to get more cards into the hand. It's the most important thing at the moment. And just to get more cards into hand before them being able to mess up with my graveyard and play the verdict, something like that. But it's really very easy a matchup. Opponent just don't have much chance here. I can do whatever I want and not worry too much about opponent finding the nuts, trying to win this. Okay, so that's it. That was game one in match four against my control opponent. Keeping the six here. Keeping the six here pretty good. Again, the usual neonate discard. Vengevine, play another creature. I had two 1-mana creatures to trigger Vengevine already, so I decided to go for the crab on turn one. This means they have to deal with crab definitely, so I get to freely just use uh, my neonate discard Vengevine without fear of the graveyard hate or something like that. Also put the whole one into the field in the process. So I still got to attack with the two huge creatures on turn 3 and still having a lot of good stuff in hand. Not hurting anything in this matchup, don't want to overcommit. So I just play my land, don't want to play into the Supreme Verdict. It's not necessary, they just have so much problems trying to deal with my stuff. A lot of going on, also this inquiry can mess them up so much and destroy their plan or whatever. So just go for the attacks. Play the adept first, play the inquiry before combat, so they have to use what they want to use. And they go for a Tavara, which is nice. My hollow one was stayed in my hand, and so I got to replay it. Attack for 4, put them on 3 life. So they need vertical past. They didn't find it, so that's it. That was quick games against my control opponent. Okay, so game 5, a trophy match. Playing against Mill, keeping kind of a sketchy hand with just because of just one Hedron Crab. I find another one from my draw, so I decided to go for the first one on turn 1. If an answer that this can be really crazy. So they had the best possible thing they could have. It seemed that I was playing against Mill, and they had a push and surgical on the same turn to get rid of the second Hedron Crab from my hand, which was really the reason why I kept this hand. So I didn't have much, just the Urbal Gurgov, but Urbal Gurgov can really go crazy my opponent, uh, against my opponent's deck, and they really have hard time beating this. I had multiple options here. I had the option to go for the Goif with the kicker ability, but I decided to draw 3 more cards with Ox. A lot of crabs here, but again I go for the second Ox. I wanted to discard this Vengevine, find another creature, and to trigger the Vengevine. And I finally find a 1-mana creature, so I was able to trigger all my Vengeance from the graveyard. My opponent doesn't have Surgical to get rid of them, so that's game over. Also, all my guys have Flying, so it's lethal on the spot. That was game 1 against Mill. This matchup is usually easy. and I usually board out all of my headroom crabs. Just don't need it because your opponent is doing their job for you, so you definitely don't need it. As I said, always cycle Street Weight on turn one unless you have the Flame Blade Adept. If you have the Flame Blade Adept, then you play the Adept and cycle Street Raids on turn two. Um you see this crazy Adept attacking for 6 damage on turn one, being able to play another adept, having the ox in my graveyard just does some crazy damage. And yeah, my opponent lost to Goif, feared the Goif after the game one. They replayed this ensnaring bridge from their hand, but I'm not sure if they saw two ancient grudges in my graveyard, just being able to easily deal with this. So I go for the ox. First trigger, play the Rutvala, then cast the grudge from the graveyard, destroy the bridge, attack with everything, put them on 4 life, and that next turn they can deal with this. So that's it. So that was all the matches from the second league, second trophy in league in a row with this deck, and with the guy from Discord doing a 10-0-2. It's from the deck's creation. The deck now has a total score of 20 wins and 0 losses in the first 20 matches, which is pretty incredible. I never heard of that personally, and the deck just feels incredibly powerful, performing spectacular, not being able to even lose a match, a game in all of the games played, except in situations where I was mana screwed or something similar to that. So pretty strong. Uh, I'm not sure what can stop this deck. What is this deck weak against? It's very good against dealing with graveyard hate, all kinds of graveyard hate, even Doties, um, whatever. So the Sanctifiers and Vec don't mess up with Vengevine. They just mess up with Ox, and Urber Gulgov, of course, can get as big as without, but still can be decent threat. So a lot of options here, and of course, sometimes this deck just wins over the Graveyard Hate with the Flameblade Adepts, Hollow ones, and sometimes the Graveyard Hate doesn't even mean anything against this deck. It's pretty hard to play against, and does in this version just attacks from a lot of different angles. Sometimes it's aggressive, drawing, discarding with a few Flameblade Adepts on the field. Sometimes it's just uh, turn 2 neonate discard Vengevine, uh, play another creature, then go turn 3 kicked Urberglurgov, which can get very huge in a lot of situations. You could see a turn 4 attacking for lethal in 2 situations, which is pretty amazing. And every next Urberglurgov is going to be even bigger. And imagine trying to deal with that playing a deck with a damage-based removal, so it's pretty impossible dealing with a creature that large, and they just have to have graveyard hate at that exact point, plus multiple removals to even try to get into the game, and have so many options to deal with their graveyard hate, and so much way to being aggressive that it's very difficult for those decks to try to uh, try to answer this old threat this deck is presenting. Okay, so that's it. That's the entire video. All the games. If you like the video, click. Want to help the channel? Click subscribe. Click like button. And yeah, 20 wins, 0 losses with a hollow one list. Pretty incredible. I hope you liked it, and that's it for today.